Welcome, welcome, welcome to another installment of the Drive Time Careers and Business Radio Show with your host, Henry Roman. I don't know why I hesitated that at the beginning. I think it was just kind of me collecting my thoughts, collecting my head, but it is, as always, an absolute pleasure to be here. It's a beautiful day somewhere, certainly not in Massachusetts. We have been undergoing a freeze. To those people that are talking about global warming, when is it going to start getting warm in Massachusetts during the winters? Because every time the temperature gets below about 10 degrees or so, I find myself using a lot of heating oil. So I will say I am looking forward to the opportunity to be part of the global warming phenomenon, so I don't have to spend as much money on heating oil during the winters. Entirely self-serving. That makes me egotistical. I'm willing to ruin the world's ecology just to save a couple $100 in heating oil? Of course not. But what I'm saying is that these claims about us having 12 years left before global warming engulfs us, as AOC said the other day, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said that we only have 12 years left. I found that comment so absolutely hilarious, based on absolute nothing, just kind of a quote that she pulled out of thin air. And unfortunately, there are so many people just absolutely worshiping her, saying, oh my goodness, if she says it, it must be true. Please, let us keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, that she has a 4-year degree, granted, from Boston College, a fine university. She's 29 years old. This is her first time in politics. She is not an expert on global warming. She did not go to college and study global warming. She doesn't have a master's or a PhD. If someone with a PhD made a case for global warming, I would probably listen. But right now, there is more evidence, perhaps to the contrary, than to the other. Now, I have read that we are in the beginnings of a global cooling phenomenon. Part of it is because of sunspot activity that has been common every time there's a sunspot cycle where there's not a lot of sunspots, the Earth experiences cooler than normal temperatures. And so if that's the case, then what is it? Is it global warming or global cooling? I understand the carbon dioxide levels are increasing, and we should be mindful of what we spew into the air. Absolutely. But look what happened in France when the liberal-leaning do-gooders that live in the city and can take public transportation and can rent cars whenever they want to or be driven to places, decided to substantially increase the taxes on petroleum because supposedly they're trying to save the planet. Who was affected by this? It was the middle-class people that live on the outskirts of Paris that cannot afford to live in Paris, but they have to work in Paris. They were the ones that were subjected to the brunt of this huge tax. And they protested, and the price increases were rolled back. By the way, if you are on Facebook Live, you are watching me live on my radio show that's broadcast every Tuesday afternoon from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Tuesday, WARA Radio, AM 820, and on the internet. And as an experiment, I'm going to be broadcasting on Facebook just to see what happens. I have got so much great news to share with you. I wanted to start out casting doubt on the whole phenomenon of global warming, because this show today is going to be dedicated to disavowing a lot of things that you perhaps think are absolutely true. Now, if you are a student in public school, you have probably heard over and over again that global warming is going to kill us. According to AOC, Alexandria Cortez, whatever her name is now, we only have 12 years left. And so, who's right? Are we undergoing global warming? Or are perhaps the indicators of global warming are inaccurate? And perhaps the conclusion that an increase in carbon dioxide levels is going to lead us to global warming, perhaps they're either overblown or not accurate, or they may be true. This is where we need an informed population. And a healthy dose of skepticism and a healthy Missouri attitude is warranted. And I'm going to give you multiple examples during the show. And I'm hoping that by the end of this show, as always, you'll walk away with more information than when you started. Accurate information, good information, things that you can use, news that you can use, and points that you can use to perhaps counter some of these sweeping statements that are being made. Let us start by this concept of white privilege. For those of you who are looking at me or seeing me on Facebook, it's very obvious that I am not a white man. I'm not black, but I'm not white. A friend of mine said it best when I was in the military. His father met me and we had a great conversation. I get a bit of a racist, Archie Bunker type person. He and we hit it off. Oh my goodness, we hit it off like he was my father and I was his son, because there are many things that we agreed on. And afterwards, he was telling my friend, who happens to be his son, man, that guy Henry, I really enjoy talking with him. He's really smart. He's spot on. And we agreed on so many things. And my friend said, you mean Henry, the Puerto Rican guy? He says, no, he's not Puerto Rican. He's not quite white. So from then on, when I was in the military, I was known as Henry, the guy who's not quite white. I also understand that opportunities that perhaps would have been afforded me had I been white were denied me because I'm not white. You know, I'm not some dewy-eyed fool who thinks that everybody will judge me by the content of my character rather than the color of my skin. Of course, people are going to judge me by the color of my skin. But I'm grateful for the opportunities that have been afforded to me, not because of the color of my skin or due to the color of my skin, but because of my record, because of my resume, because of my ability to speak and to make a point and to make a case. And when you're interviewing, it's making a case for being hired, of course. Sorry, I've got to make sure that I'm queued up for commercials here. I've got a few minutes. When people say that people that are white have prospered because they're white, I am willing to concede that they may be right most of the time. If you're tall and white and accomplished and you're looking for an opportunity, you have a very good chance of getting it. If you're not white and are accomplished and are looking for an opportunity, you have a very good chance of obtaining that opportunity. Perhaps not as much as someone who's white, because it is what it is. Am I going to be angry at the world simply because people are judging me? No. If I have to be a little bit better than someone else to get an advantage, guess what? There's a word for that. It's called competition. If you've got to compete with someone because they have an inherent advantage, then you counter it by being better at other things. Now, some of the most successful ethnic groups in this country are not white, believe it or not. They're Asians. Now, why is that? Because they're white? Absolutely not. It's because there is a culture for achievement, for excellence. You go into the household of a Chinese family after school, and we're talking about immigrant families because once they're like second, third generations, they're just like every other American's, a little bit lazy. But you go into the family of an immigrant Chinese household, and the kids are not playing video games or watching television. They're either practicing their music lessons, or they're studying, they're doing their homework, they are doing something to improve themselves, or they're maybe perhaps at the gym, or they're at, probably not a gym. I don't see too many Asians at gyms, but I see them at the YMCA, at swimming class, fencing class, sports class, is taking lessons in different sports, because the parents understand that the children, in order to be successful in life, have to have an advantage to compensate for perceived disadvantages. Why is it so difficult to understand that? And if you are a person of color, why are you so upset about this? It is what it is. No legislation is going to change people's attitudes about who and what you are. It is you who will change people's attitudes. This is not the kind of stuff that you hear on radio stations. Yeah, and I've been called a coconut. I haven't been called an Uncle Tom because I'm not black. But I definitely have been called someone who's brown on the outside but white on the inside. No, I am brown on the outside and probably reddish pinkish on the inside. But I have my opinions based on what I've seen and where I've been. And now I'm going to do something. I'm going to go ahead and, because I'm on Facebook, I'm going to go ahead and, on Facebook, I'm going to flash my ghetto card. Because indeed, I was raised in Ocean Hill, Brownsville, Brooklyn. My parents were both Puerto Ricans. I lived in a economically depressed area. And yet I went to some of the finest schools in this country. Why? Because I had the finest teachers who believed in their mission. I had parents who weren't going to take any, what from a kid. If I came home with a note from my teacher saying I'd misbehaved, you bet your bippy I would be punished. And in those days, it was a wide belt, 2 inches wide, made out of leather, applied liberally across my back. I had motivation to do well in school. I went to college. But before I went to college, I was in the military. I paid my way through school. I've worked my way through different jobs. I've acquired certifications. I've got an alphabet soup after my names, and I'm still working on getting my master's degree and perhaps something else. The joke is, by the time I'm 65 or 67, when I retire, I'm going to get my retirement papers in one hand, and I'm going to get my master's degree or my doctorates in the other hand. And that's okay with me. When I was in my 20s, I would tell people that my goal, one of my financial goals, was to have $10 million cash in the bank by age 40. Well, I'm significantly beyond that. But that has been my goal, and I continue to strive. Part of the reason why I'm having this radio show is because this meets with my overall long-range plan of differentiating myself, establishing a value proposition that people are willing to invest in. By the way, and this show is not about me. I guess what I'm trying to say is, if I've gotten as far as I have professionally, it is because I haven't sat on my tuchus blaming Whitey for my failures. I've gotten up when I've had reversals, brushed myself off, and moved forward. I've taken chances with my careers. I've taken risks. I've started businesses. I've lost money. I've launched multiple businesses over the years. They've all been failures. And I like to say, I'm getting closer. Eventually, one of these businesses is going to be a resounding success. That is the American dream. That is what we should all be striving for, to find opportunities to improve ourselves, to improve the lives of our children. This nonsense about white privilege and about racism, this nonsense has got to stop. I don't need your pity. I don't need your legislation. All I need is an opportunity to show you what I got. And then you be the judge. We'll be right back.
Nra volunteers with years of homeschooling experience will present Introduction to Homeschooling, a workshop for parents new to homeschooling or interested in homeschooling. This program will cover the basics of homeschooling and will be held at the Marion J. Moore Memorial Library in Johnston, Rhode Island on Thursday, February 7th from 6 to 8 p.m. This event is open to the public. For more information or to register for the event, you can visit enrichri.org.
Excuse me, I know you have a 9 o'clock, so I'll keep this short. I'm the business suit in the back of your closet. You wore me nearly every day before your office went, quote, casual. I used to be the CEO of your closet. Now I'm just that one intern no one ever talks to. I always thought you'd circle back with me. Get granular. Keep me in the pipeline. But nada. Nothing. Don't you remember the McKittrick presentation? You spilled coffee on me, and I still looked amazing during the breakout talkback Q&A. So, I think it's time for me to move on. I've got a great resume, and I absolutely crush it in interviews, okay? Let's make this a clean break. Shift the paradigm. The only thing I ask is that you think outside the box here and do this. Take me to Goodwill, where I can really make a difference.
Your donations to Goodwill create new jobs, training programs, and education assistance for people in your community. To find your nearest donation center, go to goodwill.org. Donate stuff. Create jobs. A message from Goodwill and the Ad Council.
Mental health, just like physical health, is an important part of every person's overall well-being. Learn about the many issues surrounding mental health by listening to our new show, Exploring Mental Illness. Everything you wanted to know but were too afraid to ask, on Mondays at 6 p.m. on WARA 1320 AM. You can also listen for free by subscribing to the Exploring Mental Illness podcast on the iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and TuneIn platforms. Find out more information by going to WARAradio.com and clicking on podcast.
When approaching your golden years on a fixed income, it becomes vital to manage daily expenses such as food, medicine, and other living expenses. But what happens when this group's finances are preyed on? This week on WACS, tune in to see Prevent Elder Financial Abuse, a presentation by Webster Bank Vice President Gabriela Vieira on preventing telemarketing schemes and scams that target the vulnerabilities of our senior population. You can view this program and all of our quality programs from around the area and information on the WACS mobile app.
You're listening to the Drive Time Careers in Business Radio Show with your host, Henry Roman. Oh yes, I dedicate this song to the journalists who have already been fired for their fake news and for making threats against little kids. Let's talk about that. So over the weekend, we had a Right to Life march. This was put together by people who, sorry about that. This is put together by anti-abortion rights activists. Every year they go to DC and have a march for life. And a bunch of pro-life speakers will get on podiums and speak. And Mr. and Mrs. Vice President of the United States, Pence, actually spoke at that event. I actually was able to listen to it. It was wonderful. It was delightful. But of course, these kinds of events will always bring out counter-protesters. People that are looking to steal a little bit of that limelight, if not all of the limelight, away from events or endeavors or some kind of activity that runs counter to their beliefs. And sure enough, there were some black, I think they're called Black Israelites or Black Jews. I forget what they're called, but this is some radical group that just advocates all kinds of crazy stuff. And of course, there were some Native American groups protesting, I don't know what. And there also happened to be a bunch of high school kids. Okay? In America, you are considered a minor if you're not yet 18 years old. I understand that there's age of consent for other things. But from a legal standpoint, you cannot sign a contract by yourself unless you're at least 18 years old. You have to vote at age 18. That's when you vote. 21 when you drink. I understand that, but so a definition of a child is someone who's not capable of living a life on their own, independently. These are minors. These minors were on a school trip because they go to a Catholic school. And so the Catholic school, exercising its First Amendment rights, was at this pro-life rally. And the kids were hanging around. They were taunted and mocked by the Black Israelites. And all of a sudden, a group of Native Americans came over to accost them. Now, I don't know about you, but this makes my blood boil. Because these kids, they are kids, were just there to support the march as is their right to do so, because the National Mall is open to everyone. You're welcome to protest. You're welcome to spout whatever nonsense you want to. That is your First Amendment right. And these kids were just there. When this group of Native Americans came to them and were actually menacing these kids, these are little kids, minors, beating the drums in their faces. One kid thought that they were being supportive of them, and so he was there kind of standing there with a half smile. What do the scoundrels, and I want to say stronger words, but decorum precludes me from using the words I really want to use. The scoundrels at CNN post a picture of this kid who's a little bit apprehensive because here's an older man beating a drum in his face. He's trying not to be confrontational. He's been taunted and called racial epithets. He's been yelled at by the natives saying, you white people need to leave. Oh, you didn't hear that. You white people need to leave this country, all of you. You're white trash. And the black Muslims are calling these kids, I think they're calling them crackers, and thus other racial epithets. CNN says that these kids were menacing them. What is the crime that these kids committed? Why is it that such vitriol was unleashed on these poor kids by the media, led by CNN? They had MAGA hats on. And we all know that people who wear MAGA hats on are all racists, misogynists, homophobes, and everything else that liberal America embraces. By the way, I have a MAGA hat. And I sometimes wear it. And I'll tell you a funny story afterwards. I'm sure I'll get in trouble with my wife if she hears this part. CNN portrayed these kids as monsters who were provoking the poor native people, who were simply there to beat on their drums. There were adults that were calling for these children to be killed. Ladies and gentlemen, there are a lot of nutcases in this country. And when you have authority figures calling for violence against others, there are going to be some people that are going to take them up on that admonition, on that encouragement. What in the name of Sam Hill is a reporter doing, advocating for the assassination of minors in this country? You cannot be a Catholic in this country. You cannot be pro-life. You can't even be a conservative without people threatening you. This is the part that drives me absolutely crazy. And I'm going to tell you about David Webb. By the way, I've got a friend of mine listening too. David Webb. Do a search on David Webb right now and pull up his picture, because that's going to be important in a moment. So I&E Entertainment, I'm going to read from RJ Media, has fired a journalist who publicly wished for the death of several Covington Catholic high school students and their parents in a pair of tweets over the weekend. Aside from his job as a post-production supervisor at I&E, Eric Arbris is a contributor to New York's media pop culture site Vulture. They say, we were surprised and upset to see the inflammatory and offensive rhetoric used on Eric Arbus. Twitter account this weekend. He worked with the company in our post-production department and never as a writer, the company said in a statement to the Wrap on Monday. Arbus was one of the hundreds of adults on Twitter calling for the deaths of children for the crime of wearing MAGA hats and smiling in public. Lashing out on Twitter, Arbus expressed his deep wish that the children and their parents would die. He said, I don't know what it says about me, but I've truly lost the ability to articulate the hysterical rage, nausea, and heartache this makes me feel, typed Arbus. I just want these people to die, simply as that. Every single one of them, and their parents. Well, you know what, Arbus, you jerk? Maybe you should have watched the rest of the video, the beginning part and the end part, before jumping into a rage simply because someone's wearing a red hat with a couple of letters on it. I'm telling you, I am a parent, and I'm a conservative. And I am a devout Christian. And at this point, I'm at the point now where I'm making statements saying, for people who feel that way, why don't you pick on someone your own size, you bully you? Pick on an adult and threaten an adult and see what happens to you. It's easy to be a big man and make threats to little kids who can't defend themselves. But try doing that to an adult and see what happens. You chicken, you. I wish I could find that person. I wish I could find him personally and challenge him to a fight. There are days I wish we had duels. Again, my Christian character is slipping a little bit because I wish there were times that you could challenge a man to a duel and say, you have dishonored me. I challenge you to a duel. Let's see if your mouth is as big or if your courage is as big as your mouth. Celebrities and journalists calling for these kids. They did not bother to look at the whole story. And I saw even on my own Twitter page, my own Facebook page, someone that I know posted that CNN article about these kids. Totally incorrect. Now, I don't know it because I don't watch CNN. I quite frankly, when I feel like being entertained, I watch because I love to laugh. But these last couple of days, I did not want to watch it because I'm just so angry at them right now. I don't know if they've printed a disclaimer. I don't know if they've apologized. I don't know if they've actually gone online to use their media to say what we did was wrong. These kids were wrongfully accused. Their only crime is that they believe in the American system and the American Constitution, where we have a God-given right to exercise our First Amendment rights, regardless of what they are. I was watching a YouTube video about some of these, what are they called? Oh dear, the name escapes me momentarily. These are people who believe that the government is corrupt and that the government doesn't have any rights as far as they're concerned. Sovereign citizens, that's it. These sovereign citizens, there's over 300,000 of them in this country. They are absolute nut jobs, in my opinion. But they have a point. And I'm saying this on radio. They have a point. And they also have a right to make their case. I don't agree with it. I pay my taxes. I support the Constitution. I support government. And if a police officer says, Mr. Roman, please step outside your vehicle, I will say, sir, I protest this. You have not followed proper procedure, in my opinion. I am recording this, and I have a very good lawyer, and I will comply. Because I've got great lawyers that will take my case, and they'll make me rich if a police officer oversteps his or her bounds and violates my rights. But that is my right. That said, we have a right, we have an obligation to comply and to obey the laws of the land because this is where we live. If you don't agree with it, you do have the First Amendment right to express yourself. And by all means, please do express yourself. I may not agree with you. As a matter of fact, I may vehemently oppose what you're saying. But you do have the right to peaceably assemble. You have the right to seek government for redress. These are rights guaranteed to us as Americans in our Constitution. And I resist any and all forces who attempt to muzzle me and my compatriots simply because our ideas are different than theirs. Let's talk about David Webb. Oh, well, let me go back one more time. I just want to finish up this whole thing about these poor MAGA kids before I go on break. So when after people heaped scorn and abuse on these poor kids, and after even the school wavered and there was talk about them being, kicked out of the school, when the truth was discovered that these kids were not his fault. As a matter of fact, these kids they showed incredible restraint despite all the abuse that they were subjected to at the time and afterwards. Most people that have had written terrible things, instead of apologizing, they deleted their tweets and their comments, and they're acting as if it never happened, it never existed. Well, baby, the internet is forever, and the stuff that you put on there has been captured, and it's forever. That's why, if you're going to say something, you better mean it, because even if you delete it, it's still going to be there. Someone's going to find it. I have fired many an employee for things that they wrote on Facebook that were cause for dismissal, and then they tried to delete it, but someone else had saved it and forwarded it to Human Resources, and our basically our hand was pushed. Check your facts, Jack. Before you make blanket statements, check your facts. Maybe I'll talk a little bit about the BuzzFeed article that blew up on the internet as well. I'm telling you, this is like a circus. If I'm cynical about the media, there's a reason for it. And if you're listening to everything that CNN says and take it as Bible, so well, CNN said this. Well, you know what? Maybe it's time for you to wake up and understand that these people have an agenda, and they're going to do anything in their power to make that agenda happen. And what is the agenda? To invalidate our president, who was duly elected in an election. And no, we are not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic. So I don't want to hear this nonsense about, well, Hillary Clinton got the majority vote. Yes, but she still lost. We'll be right back.
Does your back hurt after a long night's sleep? Has your mattress seen better days?
What's this, baby?
Is your current bedroom furniture a mix
Do I have
of
pants?
furniture sets? The Bedding Center, located on
Oh.
this radio station and high school, offers a wide array of
I can swap.
with beds, bedroom furniture, and odd-sized mattresses and boxes.
Yeah, you can borrow mine.
You can reach them online at bedding-center.com.
Yeah, I don't know who's listening or watching.
508
Hello.
268090.
All right, we got a watcher.
It's me, the designer jeans in your closet, the back of your closet. What am I doing here? Would you keep caviar in the back of your fridge with the ketchup and old milk? Yeah, I don't think so. So what happened to us? I mean, have you seen my label?
Oh, I wanted
I
to
used to summer in
tell
the
Joe I'm
Hamptons,
on.
and now
Do you have
I'm
Joe's
stuck behind
number?
a pair
Could you
of
text Joe and say, hey, I'm on the air?
Sure, I never really
Or I'm on
liked
Facebook,
it,
Joe?
And one of my pockets is so small you can't even squeeze your hand into it. But it's all about the look.
All right.
And I look good.
BuzzFeed article.
So I can be seen. You know, going to fancy parties, getting expensive iced coffees, Sunday fun days, okay? So take me to Goodwill, where I can really make a difference.
Your donations to Goodwill create new jobs, training programs, and education assistance for people in your community. To find your nearest donation center, go to goodwill.org. Donate stuff. Create jobs. A message from Goodwill and the Ad Council.
You're listening to the Drive Time Careers and Business Radio Show with your host, Henry Roman. Oh my goodness. Every week I provide a China update, but we've actually got some good news. It seems that China is actually seeing things our way. Surprise, surprise. They have floated a proposal to basically allow U.S. exporters to export up to $1 billion worth of merchandise, of exports into China to balance out the trade deficit. That's absolutely stunning news that they're actually offering that. This trade war is affecting them in ways that they didn't think it would affect them. I understand they're playing the long game and that they're willing to take some short-term pain in order to achieve long-term gain. I certainly admire that. But the fact that they're actually talking about, oh, you know what, maybe we should do this, maybe we should comply and follow international law when it comes to trade. Again, you've got to give this to Trump. If it weren't for Trump strong-arming the Chinese, imposing tariffs and making all kinds of threats, they would not have come to the negotiating table. Mr. Trump, I am a nobody. I have all of 10 listeners on my radio show, maybe 5 listeners on the internet. But if someone who's anyone is listening to this show who has access to someone who knows someone else who knows Trump or can get a word out to Trump, my word to you is stay the line. Don't reopen the government. Don't succumb to the pressure. Stand firm. You wrote the book, The Art of the Deal, and you know that leverage is something that you need to keep. Once you lose it, it's gone. You cannot negotiate your leverage. You use your leverage to negotiate. Oh, I'm going to write that one down. That's a good one. These are the things that we need to do. If you do not believe in making America great, there are several highways that will take you north of the border, will take you south of the border, and there are many airlines that will take you to other countries. But understand there are many countries that will not simply accept you because you're an American looking for a place to live. To live in other countries, you have to have either substantial income, substantial assets, or a combination of both. In other countries, you have to have a job before you can even be allowed to come into the country. So you've got to have a job offer in hand before you can work in that country. So, I'm sorry. In my mind and in my heart, I want America to be first. I understand that the Chinese want their country to be first. Good for you. The Australians want their country to be first. Right? Because Australians love their country and they're patriotic. Well, I'm an American and I'm a patriot and I want America to be first. And what is so wrong about wearing a hat that says, "Make America Great Again"? I think I'm going to get a hat. I'm going to embroider it myself. And it's going to say, "Keep America Great." And I want to see how many people actually confront me about that comment, "Keep America Great." Because I bet you dollars to donuts, these are people that don't want America to be great. They want America to slide down. So I kind of titillated you with a quick story about my MAGA hat experience. Well, last year, actually the year before last, during the Christmas season, my blushing bride of going on 12, 13 years now, whom I love very much, and who's also, by the way, Asian, invited me to sit with her during a Nutcracker Suite play that's held in downtown Boston. Now, I'm not a ballet aficionado, and quite frankly, as husbands, sometimes we do things because our wives tell us to, not because we want to. Now, had she said, "Hey, there's a basketball game at the at North Station, can we go?" I would say, "Hey, let's go." But when she says, "I want you to come with me to the Nutcracker Suite," I said, "Okay, I'll go with you." I wasn't very enthusiastic, but I said I would go. And I dressed up, I put on a nice suit, tie, I had a very nice wool overcoat on. And it was a cold day, I decided I was going to wear my MAGA hat. Why did I do that? You know, I just got the hat, I liked it. It speaks to who I am as a person. I mean, people wear clothes and people have cars because they're extensions of themselves. Well, in this case, my hat was an extension of me. And so I wore it. And I dropped my wife off at the theater. And of course, there was no parking close by. So I told her, "I'm going to find some parking and I'll come and meet you at the theater." So I was able to find parking in Boston Common, I'd say about a mile away. And I had about a mile to walk. And so I'm just walking, minding my own business. I'm pretty much a quiet guy. I'm always mindful of my surroundings. But I don't strut like a peacock. I'm always kind of almost my eyes on the ground, but I'm looking around, and I go about my business that way. It's just kind of my personality, very, very low key. And some people saw me with my hat on, and I caught the glaring glances, and I just kind of ignored them, and was, just as I said, I was walking from one part of Boston to another. Crazy me, right? And a gentleman walks up to me, and of course my alarm bells go off, and someone's kind of approaching me out of nowhere. And so I looked at him, and he took a couple steps back because he saw me looking at him. He says, "Oh, no, hey, I'm not trying to make any trouble." He says, I liked your hat. You're very brave to be wearing that hat here in Boston. And I says, "Well, Boston is you might say the cradle of liberty. This is where the American Revolution started. And so I feel it's only appropriate to wear this object." And he says, I agree with you, but you're still brave and a little bit crazy to be wearing the hat. I says, well, be that as it may. I thank you, sir, for your opinion. You're probably right on both, but God bless you, and I wish us both well. And I kept walking. And as I walked into the theater, I took off my hat because it is proper to take off one's hat when one enters a building. And I enjoyed the play as much as a 50-plus-year-old man can enjoy a play, which is not very much, but I was there. Afterwards, we had a very nice dinner. And as I'm walking out of the restaurant, some guy my age, probably in his 50s, he's got a crew with him, a couple of people. I don't know if it's their hangers. I don't know if he was a professor and had a couple of his college students with him, but these are like kind of younger adults. And he's obviously kind of the leader of the pack. And as I'm walking out the restaurant, he looks at me and he just scoffs at me and he says, really? And just his whole demeanor and attitude kind of, I don't know, flipped a little switch in me. And I just looked at him and I says, yes, really. And he proceeded to hurl not a racial epithet, but an epithet at me. Similar to the lines of, I don't even want to go into the details. I'll probably get me kicked off the radio. But it was foul and it was directed at me. And I will say this. I'm a man who, I never look for trouble. I'm probably the most peaceful person you can find because the Bible tells me, insofar as much as possible, live at peace with one another. And I really believe that. But this man just did something that just flipped a switch in my head. And I responded the way a typical sailor would to someone who's just been cursed out. I responded in kind. Not my proudest moment, I will say, but I was angry. How dare that man say what he did in front of my wife, who's leaving the restaurant. I'm minding my own business. He's trying to make a point. And I yelled back at him. And I stopped. I was ready to fight him. He saw that and just kind of turned around and hightailed it into the restaurant along with his friends. I think they realized this guy's he's got murder in his eyes. And you know what? There was. Had that man attacked me, I would have defended myself. It's been a long time since I've had a fight. I do not like bullies. And there's something about bullies that trigger this visceral, primal emotion in me that is not healthy for me. Certainly not healthy for the other person, I'll tell you that. My wife grabbed me and she says, let's go, it's over. She also said, you're taking that hat off right now. And I looked at her and I said, I am not going to take my hat off. It is my right to wear my hat wherever I choose. And she said, and it is my right as your wife to tell you, take off your hat. Ladies and gentlemen, I took off my hat. I shoved it in my side and we walked home. Because I, a great patriot and veteran, do answer to a higher power. And that is in the form of a 100-plus pound, 4'11" Filipina. And we went home and she scolded me. She says, I never want you to wear that hat when you're with me. And I promised her that I would do that. So instead, if you're watching me on Facebook, you'll see that I've got this lovely little hat. It's called, with 3 letters, it's called NRA. Stands, well, I don't need to tell you what it stands for. So I guess when I heard about those poor little MAGA kids, that definitely triggered something because it wasn't fair that these kids were raked over the coals. And you may ask me, have you worn your MAGA hat again? My response is yes, I have. My son and I have worn our MAGA hats when we go out. And you know what? For the most part, no one has said anything to us at all. I've gotten a couple of disapproving looks, but I've also gotten approving looks. My NRA hat draws a lot of scowls, usually from young women in the Cambridge area. Too bad. If you don't like it, just don't look at my ad. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for more opportunity? The Literacy Center is here to help. We have free year-round classes in English, computer literacy, and high school equivalency. With the help of teachers and tutors, you can prepare for your citizenship test,
I can't hear you.
make a resume, get ready for college. Classes held during the day, evening, or on Saturdays.
What I think is funny is that, I come across as like some super tough macho guy, but when my wife says take off the hat, I took it off.
Building a better community.
US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting. A teenager learning the lingo.
In the talent night day, I'm gonna have all my kids to remember verse from A to Z. A. All have sinned and come short of the glory of God. Romans 3.
Very good. You have 40 more seconds.
No, I'm good. I'm gonna try this.
Very good, my love.
Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will think you're, rad, just the same. To learn more, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Take this job and shove it. I ain't working here no.
You're listening to the Drive Time Careers in Business Radio Show with your host, Henry Roman. Oh yes, all together now. Take this job and shove it. I ain't working here no more. Oh, every week I look forward to singing. For those of you who've been listening to the show know that the ability to sing is not a talent that I have inherited from anyone. As a matter of fact, during a karaoke party that my family had, the police were called and they told us that we were not breaking any laws, but we were certainly antagonizing our neighbors because our singing was terrible. So please turn it off. And we did. We're almost up on the hour here for station break and all. Before we do, I did want to talk a little bit about the BuzzFeed article. So BuzzFeed published an article, and in that article, it suggested and made the claim that Trump directed his former attorney, Michael Cohen, to lie to Congress about a Trump Tower project in Moscow. This was treated as absolute fact. Now, BuzzFeed, as far as I know, is like it's like a site that reviews different things. Like I watch BuzzFeed YouTube videos, and usually the videos consist of Russian adults try American liquor for the first time, or one that I saw, which was kind of funny, British try American snacks. And you have a whole group of 20 millennial somethings trying American snacks, and then some of them saying they like it, others saying they don't. Some of the responses are pretty funny, and some of the snacks, and I think they even have one. BuzzFeed presents American kids eating Japanese snacks. As far as I knew, that's what BuzzFeed was famous for creating these little funny, kind of entertaining videos that basically waste half an hour of your time, but they're funny, and they're kind of interesting. But certainly this is not something that I'm going to go to work and say, that BuzzFeed says that American snacks are not as good as Japanese snacks, based on a panel of taste testers that BuzzFeed rolled out. Maybe, but I don't think that was the goal of BuzzFeed doing this. They're presenting this kind of in a light-hearted fashion, not a criticism about Japanese snacks or American liquors versus European liquors. This is just kind of fun. And so for me to hear that BuzzFeed actually released a story claiming that Michael Cohen was told by Trump to lie to Congress about the Trump Tower project. This thing was all over the news. I mean, it was all over the news on the weekend. And it was almost gleeful in that people were saying, we finally got him. After 2 years, we finally have a smoking gun. Well, guess what? It was wrong. CNN got it wrong again. Here's an article in CNN Politics. Amazing. Giuliani, who was Trump's attorney, would not provide further details about what they said to Mueller's office Friday evening. Special counsel spokesman Peter Carr issued a rare statement rejecting the central claim in BuzzFeed's article that Mueller had corroborating evidence, including testimony from Cohen, indicating Trump directed Cohen to lie to Congress about the deal. You know what that all means? That it was a lie. It was fabricated news. It was, can I say it? Fake news. And they went for it, hook, line, and sinker. Why? Because the CNNs of the world have an agenda. And when a media site has an agenda, you've got to be circumspect and you've got to be a little bit cynical. Ladies and gentlemen, they are trying to brainwash you. They are feeding you with false facts. It was the Nazi propaganda minister Goebbels who said, tell the people a lie often enough and they will eventually believe it. They are trying to bring down this presidency. Why do they hate this man so much? Why? Because he is not an internationalist. He does not want to roll out a one world government, and neither do I. For me, a one world government has religious connotations that play into prophetic events, and I don't want that. I know there are some people saying, no, we need to expedite this so that way Jesus will return. Yeah, you know, I still have a lot of stuff to do. I would rather do good things to hasten the return of Jesus rather than bad things. I don't want bad things to happen to hasten the return of our Savior. I'd rather do good things to perhaps delay his return so that more lives can be saved. I'm going on the religious deep end here. We'll be right back. You're listening to WARA AM 1320, Drive Time, Careers in Business Radio Show.
You're listening to WARA 1320 AM, Attleboro.
Oh, man. My love, you need my pen? Oh, you found a pen?
Welcome to the AACS News. Area residents celebrated the memory of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. yesterday in both a municipal ceremony and an interfaith service. This year's theme focused on economic justice. We spoke with Ethel Garvin of the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Committee of Greater Attleboro.
Today, the committee is celebrating its 32nd annual commemoration of the Dr. King holiday. Events start here today at 1 p.m. at the Attleboro City Hall. We will have a featured performance by the Attleboro High School Select Choir, and then we have words and remarks by our local politicians. That program lasts about a half hour, and then we'll move on to our interfaith service at 2 p.m. at Murray Unitarian Universalist Church. There we'll have a liturgy, a service program led by clergy, and then our feature presentation will be a King cantata. We've selected words from Dr. King that speak to his thoughts and desires about economic justice. And those words will be set to music. And so we have cantata readers, we have Caroline Harvey, who is a spoken word artist, coming. We have a local member of the community, a former city council member, Max Volterra, will be speaking. And then we have performances by Jacqueline Schwab, who is probably known for being featured on the soundtrack to the Civil War, Ken Burns' documentary, The Civil War. And we have a great soloist by the name of Stacey Gear, and we have a wind quartet. So it's going to be a nice mix of Dr. King's words with a variety of different kinds of music. It's so important to keep Dr. King's words and his actions in our collective memory because they still resonate with us today. And it would be a shame if we forgot them. His words are still alive and quick. And he's an excellent model for a worker. He wasn't just a dreamer, he was a worker, he was a doer, he was a servant leader, and I think that's just
He certainly was.
A model for all of us to continue to emulate.
So even today, we see a resurgence of white nationalism and xenophobia. This is all over the news. We see members of the LGBT community discriminated against, with most recent members
LGBT. See, they throw this in for civil
I'd
rights.
like to remind people that
They co-opt they co-opt the
But you should
that
have
was
to be
about the
good
health of
at
water
that.
fountains
No,
in
I'm
the
not.
1960s.
I'm off the air right now. But I
So
don't
in
like that.
conclusion, Dr. King's legacy is part of
You know, there was very real discrimination against black people. Don't co-opt the work that was done to promote your own agenda.
Mr. King did not do that.
Direct action movement find application on the international level to confront economic and political problems? I believe it can. It is clear to me that the next stage of the movement is to become international. The dispossessed of this nation, the poor, both white and Negro, live in a cruelly unjust society. They must organize a revolution against that injustice, not against the lives of the persons who are their fellow citizens, but against the structures through which the society is refusing to take means which have been called for and which are at hand to lift the load of poverty. We will place the problems of the poor at the seat of government of the wealthiest nation in the history of mankind. If that power refuses to acknowledge its debt to the poor, it will have failed to live up to its promise to ensure life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness to its citizens.
Hi everyone, I'm Jim Corbin. A weather minefield on the ground from all the snow, ice, and junk from the other day. Ice and rain, watch out. A lot of slipping and sliding going on, and not the greatest of efforts to clear the streets in some cities and towns. Tonight, clear for a time, low and mid-teens with the moonshine. Yeah, gotta love the moonshine. And then temperatures will move up a little bit as clouds gather late tonight. Tomorrow, not bad, at least through most of the daylight. Clouds and a little sun, but a southwest wind will pick up, sending temperatures up near 40. And then we'll have a few rain showers move in tomorrow night, temperatures climbing still through the 40s. How about this for Thursday? Rainy and windy. Some wind gusts could be over 40 miles an hour for a little while during midday and afternoon. That's Thursday. Highs near 50, but watch out, still very icy.
Yeah.
It's going to take a while.
It's going to be in the
to get
50s.
this solid
When it's in the
cold
50s,
ice to move
I'm
out.
going to go and
So
shuffle
you
off
may
the
have
driveway.
water on top of ice, making it slippery on Thursday. Sunshine mixed with clouds, cooler in the 30s on Friday.
Hello.
13:20 a.m.
Virginia Heston is watching.
On February 14th, 2019, the Attleboro Public Library will host a Valentine's Day concert from 6:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. The Valentine's Day concert will take place in the Marble Lobby and feature singers from Coastline on tour. Selections will include Witchcraft, Love
2 more
Letters,
minutes.
Almost Like Being in Love, Can't Buy Me Love, and other popular love songs. Registration is requested by the library to ensure that there is enough seating. To register, you can contact Library Director Christine Johnson by calling 508-222-0157 or via email at cjohnson@salesinc.org.
Got to pay the man.
Under your bed. Find stuff under there? What about jobs? No? Now try your basement. Here's a pair of overalls that overall you're not so
Wait up,
into anymore.
is my
A perfectly good
my
laptop
letter
that
are the
hasn't
letters
sat in a
backwards
lot
on
of
Facebook?
months, and even more stuff, but still no jobs? Well, you really
Take a
have
look.
both. See, stuff is defined as household articles considered as
Say
a group.
NRA or ARN.
Sometimes this stuff is no longer needed. Wait, no longer needed? That can't be right. Because remember those jobs you were looking for? Those are really needed.
Say hi,
You need
Daisy. Someone's
stuff
watching.
inside your stuff, even inside that winter coat that moved with you to Phoenix. Our job is to unlock those jobs, and it starts when you donate your stuff to your local Goodwill. Here's how we do it. When you donate to Goodwill, we sell your stuff to provide job training for people right here in your community. So just by teaming up with Goodwill, you help create jobs.
Does it say NRA or
Isn't that what
ARN?
you're doing with the leftover guitar
On mine it says
and the
ARN.
band? Goodwill. Donate stuff, create jobs.
On
Find
mine.
the nearest donation center at goodwill.org. A message from Goodwill and the Ad Council.
Does your back hurt after a long night's sleep? Has your mattress seen better days? Is your current bedroom furniture a mixture of different furniture sets? The Bedding Center, located on Pleasant Street and proud sponsor of this radio station and high school sports, offers a wide array of mattresses along with beds, bedroom furniture, and odd-sized mattresses and box springs. You can reach them online at bedding-center.com or by phone at 508-226-8090.
You're listening to the Drive Time Careers and Business Radio Show with your host, Henry Roman. Da-da. Yes, my wife works very hard for her money. Very hard. That's right, I better treat my wife right. She works hard for the money. And I told her, my love, don't worry. I'm trying my absolute best to make sure that I make so much money that you don't have to work. You're back. You're listening to the Drive Time Careers and Business Radio Show. I am so very happy to be here. We're at the second hour. The first hour, if you were listening, I'm sure you heard a very angry talk show host talking about the injustice done to the poor kids that just committed the cardinal sin of being Catholic, first of all, going to a Catholic school and wearing MAGA hats. Because of that, a death sentence was passed upon them by many people. I'm really hoping that the police will follow up on these threats, because these are threats to minors. And if I'm not mistaken, making threats to minors is a crime in most localities, unless you're making a threat to a Republican president. In that case, it's okay if you're expressing your opinions. Or you're making threats against little kids who happen to be perhaps Republican sympathizers, because they're not even voters yet. But because they wear MAGA hats, they, in the opinions of many left-leaning liberal kooks, they deserve to die, they and their parents. Not only did they think it, they said it, and they advocated it. I really hope charges are brought up against these people. I believe in my First Amendment rights, but the First Amendment right does not give you the right to advocate violence. See, that's the difference. You do not have the right to advocate the violent overthrow of the government, nor do you have the right to incite others to violence. That is why I was so angry. I was furious because a bunch of grown-up dweebs were actually telling other people, kill these kids. If that's not a definition of a bully, I don't know what is. When I was a kid in New York City, I had to fight every single day in the 4th and in the 5th grade. I like to say that I probably had about 400 fights. So if you do two school days, maybe I'm exaggerating. I had fights in 3rd grade too, but I'm just a little kid then. 4th grade, 5th grade, the kids were starting to get kind of big. A couple of fights in the 6th grade. After that, no more fights until much later. So maybe I'm exaggerating. I had 400 fights. Maybe it was more like 350, but I certainly fought a lot when I was a kid. And it was always against greater numbers or someone of greater size. Because I was the stereotypical geek as a kid. I wore a white shirt, a black tie. I had horn-rimmed glasses. Yes, I did. I looked like those slide rule scientists. If you watch the movie Apollo 13, when they have a shot of mission control, you see all these white guys with white shirts and black ties and pocket protectors and pens. Well, with the exception of being a white guy and being a guy, because I was a kid, that was me. And sure enough, man, in the ghetto, so you go figure, I was the focus. I was a MAGA hat kid, you might say, in those days. And they tried to beat it out of me. But guess what? I'm still here, and I still got my hat. That's why I was so angry. Part of the reason why. I don't like bullies. I don't like it if you're a physical bully, an emotional bully, or a political bully. Because those kids have rights. Even though they're minors, they do have the right to express themselves. You may not like it, but they have the right to express themselves. And simply because they don't agree with you and you don't agree with them does not give you the right to advocate for their death, for their murder of little kids. You should be ashamed of yourself if you did that. ashamed of yourself for being a bully. You are the most ugly thing that a human being can be, a bully. Let's talk a little bit about other bullies. So CNN has this news analyst. I don't know what kind of analyst she is. She certainly failed in basic analysis, which is review your data. Arena Martin was having an interview with a talk show host, David Webb. And I'm going to tell you something about David Webb later on. He's an impressive guy. I am so impressed with him. And I'm going to tell you in a few minutes why I'm telling you this. He reached out to me in a way that I was so humbled because I'm a nobody. He's a nationwide famous talk show host. I'm a nobody. And he actually took time to respond to me. I'm going to tell you more about that later. But CNN, this is from therap.com. CNN analyst Arena Martin learned the hard way on Tuesday morning after mistakenly accusing Sirius XM radio host and Fox Nation host David Webb for his white privilege during a discussion on race, only to find out Webb is in fact black. They say never laugh on the radio. I'm sorry, I just blew that roll. The awkward moment happened during a debate on whether race or qualifications should be an issue when hiring people for certain jobs. After Webb said that expertise and experience are what matter, remember I was talking about this on the first hour of the show, Martin interjected, that's a whole nother long conversation about white privilege. The things that you have the privilege of doing that people of color don't have the privilege of. Webb shot back, how do I have the privilege of white privilege? David said, well, by virtue of being white, you have white privilege. Martin answered before Webb cut her off. Ariva, I hate to break it to you, but you should have been better prepared. I'm black. It appears that someone slipped her a note before the interview and said he's white. I don't know if this is done to sabotage her. I'm kind of hoping it was. But here's a black CNN analyst accusing a black XM radio conservative talk show host of white privilege when the gentleman is black. Now, she apologized to him, and she went online to apologize. It was one of these fake apologies. It's one of those deals like, you know, when I was a kid, my sister would say, you're stupid. And I tell my mother, Mom, my sister, you know, blank said that I'm stupid. And my mother would say, you apologize to your brother. And of course, my sister would shoot back and say, I'm sorry, you're stupid. Same thing. That was the apology that the CNN host extended to David Webb. What David Webb was spot on. We have moved mostly, because again, I'm not some doe-eyed fool, from people being discriminated against or being ruled against or being whatever, passed up for opportunities simply because they're black. I'm glad to say that in Massachusetts, for the most part, I have advanced due to who I am and what I bring to the table, not because of my skin color. Have I been denied opportunities because I'm not white? Of course. Have I been denied opportunities because I'm not as young as some of the other people? Absolutely. But I've also had my fair share of successes. And I am living the American dream, and I'm grateful for that I am able to earn money, that I'm able to buy things, that I'm able to have a certain standard of living that many people would absolutely die for, that I live in a comfortable home, that I drive a decent car, used, but decent, that I'm able to project out into the future, that I have money saved up. These are things of the American dream, things that my grandfather, who died penniless and died of a disease that for lack of $5 could have been cured. I'm grateful to this country. I'm grateful for all the opportunities that have been extended to myself and my children. Because my children will live in a country where people will be less interested in their ethnic origins than what school they went to, what their life story is, and what they bring to the table. Previous generations have made great sacrifices to be where we are now. And those of us who have reached this point in our careers, I'm not at my pinnacle, not by any means, should not have that feeling of success and accomplishment taken away because someone says, well, you only got that because you're black, or you only got that because you're white. And that's what white privilege is. It hurts just as much to a white person when you say you have gotten what you've gotten because you're white than it is for a person of color such as myself to be told, well, you got the job because you're Hispanic. Someone told me that. I remember when I was applying to colleges. I was in the military, right? I was getting out. I wanted to go to college, and I wanted to go to the University of Virginia, which was a fine school. Had been founded by someone I admired, and still admire, by the way, Thomas Jefferson. So I applied to the school, and my commanding officer wrote a letter of recommendation, talked about the things that I had done, my service during the Lebanon campaign, talked about my work ethic. I had decent scores on my SATs, and I was admitted. I was accepted into the college. And when I was showing my admissions paper, one of my friends said, well, the fact that you're Puerto Rican certainly helped. It was like taking me holding a balloon and that guy popping it. Because it wasn't the fact that I had SAT scores in the top 90 percentile in the country. It wasn't that I had a record of service, 6 years in the military, including 4 years in various combat zones, and 2 in a very hot zone. I'm a Lebanon vet. I did 2 tours in Lebanon. That I had shown my work ethic, that I had shown that I was a man of substance, a man of vision. The kind of people that the reviewing committee at the University of Virginia, these are the kinds of people that they're looking for. All of that was washed away with that comment. It's been 30 plus years, and it still hurts. David Webb is an accomplished man. He's done quite well for himself. And I like listening to his show. As a matter of fact, I didn't know he was black. I didn't care whether he was white or black. I've been listening to him for about 2-3 years or so. Whenever I have a chance to listen to him during the day, I do. I didn't realize he was on Fox. But I like him. I like to me, he's a moderate conservative. Not like the likes of Mark Levin, who's a nutcase sometimes, or an angry man. So let me tell you about David Webb. I actually wrote, I saw an article, and I went on XM and I saw an article about him. And I found his Facebook page, and I wrote him a message on Instant Messenger. And I just said, hey, I really admire how you treated this whole incident. You really are a credit to those of us who are, who are proud of our achievements and don't want people to use color as a way to take away our achievements. I said, I have a little radio show in a small town. It's not listened by anybody, probably myself and a few of my friends. But I would love to have you on my show if you ever had the opportunity to do so. And I said, that's how much I admire you, and it would be such a joy. I never expected to hear back from this guy. I mean, like I said, he's a big fish. I'm a minnow. I'm not even a minnow. I'm a paramecium in a little pond. He emailed me back and sent me his personal email address. He says, you know what? Let's try to figure this out. I'd love to come on your show. He sent me his email address. Whether it happens or not, the fact that number one, he responded. Number two, he was interested. Number three, he gave me his email address. I am so taken aback by that These are the kinds of people that I admire. You know, the whatever outfit Beyonce is wearing, I don't care. Whatever, you know, whatever some left-leaning whack job actor says during the Academy Awards, I don't care. But the fact that this man who's busy, who's accomplished, is willing to even think about coming on my show because he feels, you know what, I'm gonna help someone else.